The next exercise, exercise 13, is E13A, and it is shapes on a plane. Okay? Now, the way this works is you'll lay in a horizon line. Okay? You're going to pick two shapes. You can choose from sphere, notice how I just drew an up arrow, and then connect the lines, and you have pyramid, cube, cone, rectangular prism, and cylinder. All right, so pick two. And here we go. You are going to demonstrate these shapes in 13A, 1 point, 13B, 2 point, and 13C is your choice for 3 point, whichever one you want to do. You only have to do one. Okay? So you can do worm's eye, you can do bird's eye. Got it? And here's the other thing. In each one of these, use a different value technique. It needs to be the same one across it all. Okay? You with me? So, I'm going to choose sphere because, hey, guess what? I have a circle template. Now remember your rules of implied depth. They apply here, right? So, I can easily add some implied depth circles in here, very simply. Okay? But, I think I'm going to go with rectangular prism. And this is where it gets interesting. If I'm going to do 1 point linear perspective, I put down my line for my first cube. I'm going to bring it up front, so I'm going to make it big. And then I'm going to very lightly, and I'll erase these marks, figure out how that extends back towards that vanishing point. Now, if I'm doing one-point linear perspective, then that means my rectangular prism from the front will look exactly the way it should. And then recede this point to that point. Make my lines parallel. And there we go. Make me another. And remember, size relationships, things receding into the background, things like that. I believe on your template that came with your sketchbook, there should be some rectangles, things like that. And simply put your lines in. And there you go. Right? Now, what's next? Have to pick a value technique, right? Which one? You tell me. Dyed pencil, smudging, scribbling, scumbling. Smudging, okay. You can get very precise, again, with like the paper stump. The first thing you have to figure out whenever you're applying a value technique is, where's your light source? If your light source is over here, then that means your shadows come this way. If it's over here, your shadows go this way, right? If it's in the background, your shadows are moving forward. Let's go, for the interest of things and visual interest, let's move these. I'm going to choose over here. So my light source is going to come in from this direction. If it does, then that means everything, just like in one-point linear perspective, everything is moving light-wise in a given direction, okay? So I'm going to make just gentle, light lines where the light source comes from. There is actually a very precise way of doing this, but we're not going to get into that, where you can actually designate a spot and use one-point linear perspective to put your lines down and see how they would lay on the plane. But like I said, we're not going to get into that. Just approximate it is fine. Once I've got that, then I know and I can now when we talk about smudging, there's a couple of things you can do also. Another one of those is take a really soft pencil, okay, and if you have any kind of sandpaper or anything like that, you can run that back and forth over the sandpaper to produce graphite dust. Does this make sense? Graphite dust becomes very, very handy, and I've got some that I can use, especially if you're using a paper stump, which if you lost your paper stump, can't find it, anything like that, you can always just take a sheet of paper and make what's called a tortillon, which just means tear off a sheet And then roll it up into a point. Make it cone shaped. And there you go. Now you have something you can work specifically with. With graphite dust, you may need a second sheet of paper to put it on so that you don't smudge your paper directly. So, I'm going to put a little graphite dust in. All right. Now with this, with a paper stump or a tortillon, you can do this. You take it, get some onto the tortillon. Try not to spill it. And let me just move that over here for the moment. All right. Find your object. Tighten up the tortillon. Make that a bit stiffer here. That's why a paper stump tends to work better, because it is stiffer than a handmade tortillon. All right. See? Does this make sense? Graphite dust is handy stuff. You can especially if you have a large area that you're trying to cover, say side of a cube. You just take it and work it in. Now, you don't want to blow graphite dust away. What you want to do is try to just knock it off. Then you can come in with an eraser to eliminate the parts you don't want. And with smudging, that is a key thing, is using that eraser to get rid of excess unnecessary smudges, to shape your shadows, make them more precise, things like that, okay? Yes? Good. The next thing, yes?
Can you show how to do some of the other shapes?
Sure. So, let's take a look at pyramids and cylinders, okay? What technique? Because remember, I'll do this in 2-point and different set of shapes. So what technique should we apply on this one, not stippling? Scribbling, okay. Let me see. Okay. So, let's go with some pyramids. Making pyramids is simple. You just need to make an up arrow and then connect the bottom, okay? So if I'm going to do a pyramid, say here, I have an up arrow, right? Then connect. Now the great thing is how do you do this in linear perspective? Well, what this means very simply is we know that this goes up to here and then this goes out to there. You see? Which means any other pyramids I make from this point need to follow that idea. I can make a down arrow and theoretically the base of my pyramid, wrong way, would go like this. This is where the base of my pyramid actually is. So let's bring that one up, and then this one up, and then this one down. You see? Does that make sense? Because what you can't see is that back corner. Same premise can be applied with cones. So to show you, I'm sorry, not cones, cylinders, or the base of a cone. So if I want to apply, say, a short cylinder, I'm going to use these same two vanishing points, okay? And what I want to do is that same premise with the pyramid where I just lay down a base, right? Here's the trick. Within this, halfway, 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 and halfway. Make sense? So let me darken this so you can see it better on the screen. So if I make that shape right there, see it? And then I mark the halfway point, and the halfway point, and the halfway point, and again the halfway point. See where those points are? Watch. Curve, 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 and curve. Now I've made an oval, or a circle that's been laid down on a plane. Okay? Then, bring it up. Same premise as below. Only difference is, I don't really have to worry about the bottom now, do I? That should have come a little bit further out. My apologies. So that would end there. One thing to remember is this. When you cross the horizon line, and things are roughly on the same distance from the horizon line, roughly, from the top to the bottom, whatever this curve is, flip it over. So it'll be the same. Make sense? So, once I got that, all I have to do to make the cylinder solid is get rid of what would be, what you couldn't see behind it. Now that I have that, I can apply techniques. Does this make sense? Now, if the top of this cylinder was below the horizon line, it's the same thing as if you were drawing out a box below. We're in scribbling lends itself very well to applying shadow and gesture. So scribbling is also very handy with charcoal, if you're using charcoal. I'm using same premise of light direction as previous. And you got to think about it. If you got a pyramid, its shadow comes to a point, doesn't it? If you have a cylinder, its shadow would round out at the top, wouldn't it? Make sense? Okay. Other shapes. I mean, the cone, same premise as cylinder, just the top comes to a point. Got it? Any other shapes? So, what are you doing over break? You're going to do three drawings, shapes on a plane. You'll pick two shapes. You'll do a couple of one, couple of the other. In linear perspective, you're going to do a 1 point, a 2 point, and then choose your 3 point, okay? Got it? And I'll get all this written up, posted for you, along with the video. Make sense? If you have any questions, want additional examples, please by all means stay for a minute and I'll be glad to show you, okay?